your hair or Jack's hair, are you?
No,
No, the claps. Nothing but
wouldn't
the
have thought
claps.
so.
Jack's still got some bed hair going on. But yeah, how are we both? I haven't actually spoken to you. You guys have been on far too many things recently, and almost too much time
What
together.
This
one
was one of
thing?
them. What do you mean?
Exactly. This TSS. Come on, that's the most time you guys have
This
spent
again?
together in ages.
Jackson back again. Uh,
I'm sure you must
this,
have had an Omni video together at one point again as well. Come on.
I think so.
No, you don't like each other that much, see? All
Jack
right.
keeps making me try and play Hydreigon. I keep saying no. That's pretty much the loop we're in at the moment.
Daichi put a video out of Hydreigon, I
He
believe.
did, and his mouth was quite wide as well, so must be good.
Have you not
Correlation.
succumbed to making a video of your own yet, Joe?
It did make top eight for the first time in an online tournament, so it might have to be in a video of mine soon, going over the results, where I will once again call it meme tier garbage.
Yeah, so
Um,
you're gonna put that in the actual thumbnail as well, right? Do not
no,
play. I've just
like
given you a
it's just,
thousand views.
it's just. I mean, no one even cares anymore, do they? Like, it's just a mid deck. I think most people are kind of bored of it by now.
Right. Okay. Let's
I
make a
hope.
start since we're here and we want to kind of get through this. Lots to talk about. But yeah, welcome back to the Spill the TCG podcast with myself, Alex Dow. I'm joined once again by Joel Deluxe, Jack Old, and my fellow Spill the TCG podcast friend in Joe Bernard. I saw him give me a dirty look just then. Saw his little beady little eyes look up at his camera. It's quite scary. It's quite a scary view. But yeah, truly, how are you actually? Both of you, to be honest.
Not
Yeah, doing
bad.
good, mate. Thank you. Oh, go on, Joe. Go on, Joe.
That's
This
all I
is
have to say, mate.
this
Not
this is where
bad.
this is where we try and work out who the Omni and the
Quick,
Poke is. Look at
quick
them
update
fighting
is that
already.
Rav is leaving hospital soon. They're going to a house location. So good updates there to be had on Rab's front. But we're not pressuring him back to the pod anytime soon. He has far more important things to worry about. So yeah, we've got Jack again. Happy to have him. You know,
Yeah,
safe pair of hands
yeah,
until
I'll
Rab's
fill
back.
We call it Jack
fill
safe
the
hands
gaps until
Jack
I'm.
safe hands old. Is that what we got?
Yeah, always known as Jack safe hands old.
But yeah, Jack, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. Haven't played too much Pokemon since last week. To be fair, had lots to do, but yeah, good, good. Happy to be back. Thank you for. Clearly, I didn't completely butcher the first week, so
I think
I
some people
suppose
have said
that's
it's
a
the most coherent pod we've ever done, which is weird.
bizarre. What are the correlations there? Anyway, we miss you, Rab. We really do miss you.
Uh,
I think Harriet's trying to get rid of him. That's what I've heard in recent times. Yeah, the
Message
other
you
update
saying
was
you don't need him for a podcast, do you?
he was kicked out to go to play Lorcana or something when he
yeah, she was sick of him.
incredible, incredible.
She framed it as you need your own space away from the hospital, but we can read between the lines. We know what that means.
Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah, no, they're doing well, which is always great. And I think with the Pokemon scene as well, there's a lot of big news that have popped up. I think that's probably one of the first things we want to talk about, right? Everyone else has been speaking about it. It kind of came down as big news quite heavily a few days ago. It was on the Play Pokemon tweet and then into their sort of community forums, I believe.
mhm.
But Joe, do you want to quickly run us through roughly what it was kind of saying?
So yeah, changes to the tournament structure based on the community feedback. You can read the whole thing about it, but obviously they changed the structure at the start of this season, and they're basically saying that they're still doing a monitoring process where they are aware of issues that were brought up in the community because there was, rightfully so, I think some negative criticism about the changes coming into this season. And one of the remedies that they've attempted here with the upcoming changes is that now to get to day two Swiss, you are able to get a 5-2-1 record rather than a 6-2 record, and you can continue competing in day two of the tournament. And that's knowing full well that you can't make top eight, but you can still have a number of Swiss rounds in day two in an attempt to still elevate your standing from day one. And, if you still go on a winning record, you can still get into packs and cash, in theory. So I was initially sort of outraged and confused by the post. I think that's normally my reaction to most TCG announcements. But having some reflection on it, I don't think it's as bad as I first thought as a change. And I do think this generally is a good change for very good players because they have more opportunities to win more rounds. And typically, if you think this is a skill expressive game, that the better player given more rounds will on average end on a higher placement. So in theory, they have chances to still get good records. And if you're an inexperienced player, you're still playing more Pokemon. And if you're just having a good day, that's still good. But I think that the criticism still with this change is that you're going into day 2 of a tournament, playing another 4 rounds or whatever it is, depending on the size of the tournament. Knowing that you can't make top cut can feel like quite hollow. And I think if you do have that early loss or tie in day 2, it's like, why did I wake up early on Sunday to come and do this? And maybe I've missed a few of the side events at the same time as well. So there are definitely like drawbacks to this. Especially when it seems really weird that side events are like the main means of cash generation for the tournament organizers as well, that they would want more players available on a Sunday, which is really weird. So there's a lot of angles to this that I'm sure you guys can weigh in on as well. But the long story short is it's now easier to get into day 2 of a tournament, but there's no changing in like anything else, I suppose. So you just have more opportunities to play poke now if you get a 5-2-1 record. Which it's an interesting change, I think.
I'll jump in here before we go to Jack. But effectively, they've been able to react to a lot of public, I guess, not outcry necessarily, but feedback and community feedback, and the fact that the players just want to be playing more Pokemon, right? We used to have so many more rounds in Swiss in day 1 and effectively day 2 if you made it through. That they're kind of giving that back, or that opportunity back to, I guess, a good amount of players, because we will see a massive increase in players who make it into day 2, right? I know there's further conversations that we can kind of discuss as well about whether some people might even consider just IDing it at that point into day 2 at like a 5-2-1 record. It was quite an amusing sort of a poll that I saw on Twitter. It might have been Alberto Conti, actually. But then, yeah, of course, they haven't addressed the other aspect of, well, they're giving people more chance to play, but not giving them a chance to become the champion of a tournament is a really weird dynamic I still find quite confusing in my eyes. Playing more poke is great. The cost of tournaments has increased, and it still is kind of increasing, and maybe that's to do with the hall rentals and all the other things that a lot of organizers have to deal with as well. But yeah, there's that big drawback. I'm still a bit bemused by the whole situation, but I don't know your thoughts, Jack.
Yeah, pretty much echo, I guess, across what both of you have said. Sorry, I'm just looking at a couple of stats while we're doing this, because they've mentioned a couple of stats that I want to talk about, which were quite interesting as to why they were doing this. But yeah, I think I probably also had a bit more of a negative reaction to it than I have now settled on. I think there are good things and bad things about this. I think it's pretty good, like we say, from a playing Pokemon perspective, and that obviously was quite a vocal argument from quite a few people on Twitter. Admittedly, I think some of the people on Twitter that were vocal about it were people that are vocal about a lot of things, so I don't necessarily know that always adds weight to the argument, if you know what I mean. It feels like it's sometimes the same people shouting about things. But regardless, getting to play more Pokemon is good. I actually don't necessarily disagree, but I don't agree that everyone has to have the opportunity to win going through to day 2 if it's obvious that is not what day 2 is, and that's kind of what they've said in their post. So I think that's fine. But without, just like I say, echo a lot of what you guys have said, and don't really want to repeat that side of it. The thing that I don't think they've addressed is the thing that has almost been the reaction from the reaction, is that there's still weird situations about cash only being down to top 32. So now missing out on a winning in for top 8 can actually end you in really weird circumstances where you actually still end up missing top 32, whereas someone who came in at a 5-2-1 record might have won out and got there before you. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with someone, that person still has the same record, and it's about resistance and all of those important things, and I still think that's relevant. But I think the asymmetrical top cut fixed a lot of the issues from a standings perspective and dealt with the whole bubbling issue there. I still think there's a prizing bubbling issue that I think this actually makes more complications for rather than helping with. It opens up more possibilities for people to cash out of an event, which I think is great because, like we say, tournament costs are going up. Plus, also, it's just a really nice feeling going to an event and being able to take home, however many dollars it is now for a top 32 an event. That's just that's a really nice feeling. There's nothing that the same with just getting a box. And I'm so happy to the cash has increased and improved, and I really like that. And the boxes, the boxes are further down. And I was always really positive of those changes back when they were announced in summer. And similarly, I'm also over summer I was also quite vocal about the fact that I would almost lean on the side of I prefer top heavier prizing from a cash perspective personally, because I think it's more I think there is skill expression in the game, and I want to be rewarding the good players. And I think that was what the 6-2 record said to me. That was what they agreed with, and it's weird to it's a little bit weird to me, I guess, that they've changed one aspect and said everybody can still potentially get cash, but they haven't necessarily I don't know. I don't feel those two things necessarily agree with one another. Now, obviously, there's going to be thousands of conversations behind closed doors that we are not privy to, there will be reasons that cash isn't asymmetrical similarly to top cut. But yeah, I think I'm positive about the change, because at the end of the day, playing more Pokemon, if it's more options for people to decide to. I can only get top 16 in the absolute best case, but I'm still going to try for top 16, or I'm going to go and visit Gdansk for the weekend because I've never been here before. That's giving people those options is fantastic. I'm surprised they did it mid-season is the other thing that I'll say. I think it's a very big change to make mid-season, especially given that the points disparity from a day 1 to day 2, or a higher place finish compared to just a 5-2-1 record is huge. It is much bigger this year. And also they've changed the invite structure this year to it now being a race rather than a threshold to cross. I think I don't think it feels super bad, but I think there will be people that got a 5-2 record at some of these events and well, I've missed out on potentially close to 100 CP because they changed it halfway through the season. I've never been a massive fan of mid-season changes. I think you have to let a season run its course, and I would rather see the point if their worry is about people making worlds, I'd rather see the point threshold move than trying opening the doors for more people to get points, because I think that feels less bad. But equally, both kind of feel bad. So I don't know that there's a right way and wrong way of doing it. That's why I'm not a big fan of mid-season changes like this, because I think it has the potential to really upset some people and feel really bad for some people. But yeah, I think it's a positive change. I just think I almost feel like it's half a change. I feel like more stuff needs to be adjusted because of it. The stats I mentioned that I just wanted to briefly touch on is they obviously said the reason why they changed this or they changed everything back in summer is because round times were, or they were dealing with venue time constraints. They've quoted that round times of best of threes were close to 80 minutes per round. That surprises me because, I haven't been to a tournament this year. You guys will probably have a better indication than I will. But I feel like in the 4 or 5 tournaments I went to last year, things were pretty rapid. Things were the turnover was quite quick. It was always still over an hour. But I would not have put it at an average of 80 minutes, especially for a day 1 tournament. I don't know whether that's felt different this year.
I've looked at the clock multiple times and it's been over 20 minutes of overtime, so it's not actually that crazy. I think 70-80 would be my guess. So I think that's actually a pretty fair estimate.
Yeah,
especially because it'll be more in the US, I would imagine.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me necessarily that is the case. I just I guess I was curious as to whether the changes that had already made had affected positively or negatively or relatively neutrally in terms of round turnover, I guess.
Just a very tiny thing. There was a freaking lunch break in where was it? Was it in Gdansk?
Yeah, there was.
I was like, they know the stats that it's 80 minutes each round. We have time, bro. We do not need. They want to get us out there as quickly as possible. Don't give us lunch breaks. That's a freaking slap in the face. That lunch break could be an extra round. Do not give us lunch breaks. For God's sake.
It felt kind of crazy because it was like technically early in our day, right, Joe? Because we'd have like one round. We'd have the couch segment. We'd have 40 minutes of waffle.
There's a lunch,
and then
a lunch break after one round that we showed.
And we were like, what? Yeah, maybe that's what threw me off. Yeah.
I don't think anyone wants a lunch break. They have the stats. They know there's 80 minutes. Players will always have an opportunity. Kids will always have an opportunity to eat and drink and go to the bathroom.
I think that's
not a problem in any which way.
That's what I mean. It can be a problem, right? But you just don't want it to be a problem. Because we've seen it not be a problem so far, doesn't mean it won't be going forward. I guess is the.
I feel like it's venue specific, right? It's venue specific. If the venue has good food facilities, then or like good food facilities, multiple food facilities, because there was it might have even been Gdansk last year. I can't remember, but there was if there's one, like ultimately you have to finish your round in like 30 minutes to try and even get to the queue. So I think there are probably tournaments that do need a little bit more of one. I don't think an hour long lunch break is ever like there's been tournaments where it's been like a whole.
It wasn't an hour to be fair, but yeah. It was. How long was the lunch break? It was 40 minutes, Alex. I think.
Yeah, about 40 minutes. I mean,
but again, like you say, that on top of 80 minutes of a round, that then bleeds into an hour or so. I think a half an hour lunch break is like the most I would think people. But plus also again, the people that are likely to really need it are like the juniors and seniors divisions more so than the masters, right? Who have less rounds where you can probably get it. Like I feel like sometimes it's a lunch break for convenience to line it all up and do it for everyone, rather than actually saying, right, you're a master, you're a grown adult now, you can deal with this, play 8 rounds. Juniors and seniors, you've got a lunch break because, it's a bit of a different like kettle of fish with them. But yeah, I agree, Joe.
Yeah, we should never have a lunch break.
I mean, like I said,
if they're so worried about time constraints, so much so that they would hurt the general tournament experience by having less rounds in a tournament, which everyone wants to play more. The fact that they then throw us a 40-minute lunch break is a real slap in the face, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've had on screen, so I've just kind of been clicking around on. There's like a discussion thread that was part of the Pokemon community website as well, and I think there's not many posts, but one of the posts actually highlights someone looking at the numbers for day 2 participants. It says there'll be like a 64% increase in day 2 participants based on sort of the previous tournaments.
Someone else did numbers on this. I think there was just taken from one of the more recent tournaments. It was like an extra 100 or so players going into the day just from records alone. So yeah, unsurprisingly, it's going to be a lot more players. And also it's weird from a day 2 perspective in terms of logistics, because now day 2 will feel similar to day 1 in that there will also be these 20-minute breaks between rounds because there's still so many tables playing. So.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Having more day 2 players is only like there is a break-even point, right, where actually all of a sudden it's. And at the moment, day 2s may be so small that it doesn't matter, but there will be that break-even point. And that's it. I've just had a look at the exact same thing, Dow. That's like 64% is actually.
But have you seen the next metric where 46% of the masters who qualify for day 2 will not be able to win the tournament at all? Which it does seem just very crazy.
I mean, the argument is so right, is that because there is so much generous cash points and packs, that becoming the champion should never be like the end goal. Like, well, I mean, it's the end goal for everyone, but
for you to make day 2, but when you're in day 2, I think like that should be it is the ultimate goal, right? When you made it to day 2, there's that opportunity you do. If I made it into day 2, I wouldn't be thinking, it'd be great to just cash, for example.
Bro, at 6-2-1, I'm always thinking I just want to get close. I'm never thinking I can still win this tournament.
But you don't want to be saying that there's no chance, right?
Yeah, of course. But it's the same thing that we've said, which is you just have to detach what day 1 and day 2 means and make it just more rounds of the tournament, and you're like the end of your round 12 is the only thing that matters.
Even you look bored.
It doesn't matter when you got your win and loss.
No, but you know what I
It's,
mean. Yeah,
I don't know.
obviously
I
do
would
get it.
I
do
would
get it.
keep fighting for like I never do sides on a Sunday anyway.
No,
Like sometimes
likewise.
I'll do fun stuff. Like maybe I'll go out if it's a city I haven't been to.
Mhm.
More likely I'm probably just like cubing or finding another fun format to do. Which is like to be fair, Sunday is the day where you actually socialize a lot more with your friends.
Yeah.
Like it's normally just in between rounds. So it might almost hurt the actual enjoyment of the tournament because you don't have as much social time with people. But then again, this is from someone who never day twos, so probably the good players never get that anyway. Huh, that's what it must be like for them.
I mean, look, there's a couple of things that I think are just really key from this perspective. One, like you both have already said in both of your sort of monologues there, it was like an initial reaction, right? Where it's like quite negative.
Yeah.
Obviously, we haven't seen. I also was showing up like just people responding to the actual tweet or some quote reposts, and they all were on the day or pretty much like within the hour, right? I would love to see the response now, a few days later, when people's had a chance to absorb. It's the same when we had the whole championship series change at the start of the season, and so on.
I think the
People
main
love a
reason
moan.
yeah, I mean, people like to moan, we know that, but I think the main reason that there was like more outrage and frustration is that the post is really weird. They're like, we hear all your concerns. We're not going to fix it and do something a bit different anyway. So it's like, okay, you've heard our concerns, but
Now play some more
yeah,
Pokemon.
this isn't a solution to the concerns that we've actually raised. So it's a we hear you, but we like it was mistranslated or something. You know,
Yeah, but I'm taking it as a positive that they have been hearing and listening into the community. I guess.
I also
I
think
that's
generally this is probably like the biggest change they could do within this season. Like Jack was surprised it happened this season and it wasn't something that we waited on. But I think in terms of tournament structure, they probably can't do anything more drastic in this season. So I do think this is like we're throwing you a bone. We want to make changes and we are already thinking about things we could do differently going into next season. But this is like the most impactful thing they could do without completely looking at reorganizing the tournament structure, which is again really awkward mid-season.
I mean,
Yeah, well,
would you guys think that there could be another one this season?
That's really weird. It's also this is also
2-3 months in, right? There's another like 6 months to go, or more.
Like I think the only other opportunity is during a rotation as well, because it's like another time where they have to announce something, and the game is changing just inherently anyway. So like that's a period where I think another window of opportunity that they do have. It's also very strange that this comes into effect just after LAIC as well, which is just a quick note. It comes into effect. It says 17th on their website, but I assume they mean 18th because it says Monday. But either way, yeah, from the 18th onwards, that's going to affect the regionals and special events and ICs as well. I think ICs is actually the biggest payoff because you can take early losses in that tournament and then you actually have a real opportunity to still get a massive heap of points. So it's really weird that they put it into effect after the first IC. it's actually pretty bad because I think that's when you really want to fight tooth and nail for like 4 more rounds, right, or 5 more rounds if it's a big enough IC. So yeah, just not having that opportunity is a bit annoying. But this is fast work from them, and I think it's either going to be pre-EUIC, you would imagine, right? If it's going to be a rotation style announcement, and we hope that the EUIC is a rotation. And not just like a weird interval after EUIC and then just before NAIC, because I think that feels weird for the season. But yeah, that would be the hope. But I again have no expectation that there'll be any changes this season because I think they typically would prefer to do it just at the beginning of a season because it's just far less confusing for people.
Have you both spoken about this at all on any forum?
No.
I don't know. You don't normally touch on this on any poke, have you? So
we actually I'm going to say we do. Usually, we do chat about stuff like this, but yeah, again, I guess because I'm a little bit not dejected, but like I haven't been playing at all this season. Like this change will not affect me whatsoever. Yeah. And similar, like we can, I guess, start to talk about the ID thing. I don't know whether I would even like ID into day 2, and like I don't think I would anyway. But I like, even if I was only playing one tournament and just wanted to make a day 2, because I'm not that fussed this year, I don't even know whether, like, I don't know whether this change affects me at all. So I guess that's why I haven't been like as on it. I'm going to be like completely honest here. Until you brought it up today, I'd actually forgotten it had happened, which again shows how much of a storm in a teacup these things are sometimes. Like
Come on, you
it was
got
all I
ID
saw
for.
on.
I'm just gonna say you got ID for those limitless points, mate. Come on, buff yourself
Well,
up.
yeah,
Think of that
yeah,
page.
there are,
Figure that
yeah.
page. That
But yeah,
that top 512 that's gonna appear on limitless from now on. God
Huge.
damn,
like
let's go.
Game changing.
so, yeah. I just on mid-season changes there. I'd be surprised if we saw anything else, but I would have said that this time last week, and we've seen something. So don't trust anything. The one thing I will say though is I was pretty sure. Like I thought the changes over summer were so big that I thought we probably weren't going to see anything for a couple of seasons at all.
Yeah.
But this already says to me that we could. I don't think we can expect changes next summer, but it would not surprise me anywhere near as much as it would have, like I say, a week ago. That they may have already identified things that they want to change. Because again, I could be misremembering this from the pre-COVID era, but I really feel like they made changes to seasons really sparingly. There was the big shift to regionals and like shift from nationals to regionals, which was a very big deal. From then on, I feel like there wasn't masses and masses of changes other than just championship point threshold
Yeah,
for
we had
Worlds.
the threshold drop from me and Joe when we were in Italy, so that was
Yeah, so that's the only other one that I can really remember. So I don't know. I kind of was expecting us to not see another peep from them for 2 years essentially, but we've already seen one 3 months in, which again, more like the other thing is this is more communication than we've ever had, right? Which is a good thing. Whether you agree with the change or disagree with the change, I think everyone strives for more communication, especially from TPCI at times, because sometimes it is just like an ambiguous hole of we have no idea what's going on, we don't know when to expect changes, we don't know whether to expect changes. So again, like taking it for the good that it is, this is them talking to us, this is them noting that they have seen people's concerns, and yeah, like I guess despite me not being 100% sure on it, I guess give the changes a chance, give them a chance. There's probably only, like you say, Joe, so much they can do within a season without completely derailing the season, and then it causing a much bigger issue. So yeah, I'm glad to see that they're acknowledging things. The only other thing that I guess concerns me a little bit is whether they had given it enough time to really, like, this was such a big change, right? Whether 3 months was enough time for them to see, because again, I feel like there was massive outrage over summer about all the changes, and then within a week, all of that had gone, and there was something else to be annoyed about on Twitter, and everyone had forgotten about it. Now, there have been things that have continued through, like people saying, I want to be playing more Pokemon, I'm going to these events to play Pokemon, and I'm playing less. There's still been undercurrents of things, but yeah, I would be interested to know why they thought now was the right time to do it, rather than just say, no, this is how we're doing this season. Next season, like we'll promise we'll make some changes next season, but we're not going to do them in the middle of the season. So yeah, I don't know.
I'm still waiting for the season rewards program. They have not said a peep about that. It's been one line of text that I've been holding on tightly to.
You've been championing that for a long while.
My goodness.
I was literally going to say, like, we've had all this news, but we haven't had news of that, or maybe some other things that we.
It's bizarre. It's absolutely.
I thought
bizarre.
that was what this was. I thought when I saw the post, I thought that was this.
Players who aren't chasing an invite need that incentive. We need that. I'm saying it as a we because I'm not going for my invite. We need that incentive. We really do. They have to tell us. We need to know. I'm not booking cups. I'm actively not booking cups at the moment because I have no real need to, because I'm not invite chasing. If I start seeing the carrot on the stick, I'll start going to tournaments again. Joe, it's just that simple.
If you love this game, you'd still be supporting your local game stores. Come on now.
I play more Pokemon than probably like 98% of people, I would say.
True, very true. Right. We've touched on a lot of this already. We'll move it on to our sort of main topics for this pod. I'm sure loads of people have got plenty of views on that sort of thing, and like I said, it's down to everyone else and how they take it. But yeah, we know LAIC is creeping up on us now. It's only actually a couple of days away. Is it a couple of days? Maybe a day away now, actually, sorry. As we're recording this, we're going to get this out before it as well. just very quickly, we know that they've announced the casters for each of the games a couple of weeks ago, I believe, but they put a post out. Some fellow colleagues of ours that we've had the chance to actually cast alongside as well. So we've got Pablo as host for the whole of the tournaments, I believe, across all the games, it looks like. And then from a TCG perspective, Ethan, Freya, Carl, and Chip, who are going to be, guiding us through LAIC. So lots to look forward to this weekend, kicking off tomorrow. But what we'd like to do is actually have a little look at and do a tier list again, to be honest. We have each taken away what Joe had put as the top 21 decks, and actually rebuilt our own tier list and our own meta predictions in terms of percentage as well. What we're going to do now is actually just quickly combine all of that and give a bit more of a consolidated view. So it could be pretty wild. I don't think it will be, because we're at the end of the format, or towards the end of the format, where it's quite mature. But I know Joe's already trying to smirk and probably going to shout at us about why.
I've got hot takes, bro. I've got spicy hot takes.
He's just doing it for a laugh. Have you done an LAIC tier list yet on Omni?
No, I did a top 10 a week ago.
Fine. Right. So I'm just going to call out. So the process, I'm going to call out a couple of decks, or a deck at a time. We'll quickly give where we put it, a quick percentage, and then if we need to, we'll debate. If we're quite happy with its position, we'll put it in. So to give context as well, the tier list is currently up on screen, S to D tier. A lot of tier lists that we would have seen, or we've seen so far, kind of condense a lot of A, B, and C. There's a lot of decks in there. We've tried to do a bit of a zoomed in approach, and we've stretched it so that we will likely have an S tier deck and a couple of more D tier decks, for example. Right. To kick things off, we'll start with the most played deck that has been in the last few tournaments, in all honesty. So Raging Bolt Ogerpon. Jack, just very quickly, what tier you put it in, what percentage, and then we'll go to Joe.
Yeah, it was A tier for me, and I put it as 15%. Spoilers, it is probably it is my highest percent. So yeah, I feel like it's, looking at the data, hopefully a pretty good gimme, but I can see Joe smiling already. So D tier 4%, go.
I'm smiling because we're identical. I put 15% play rate, and I said A tier deck.
A tier deck, 15%. So I had it in A tier. I had it at 14. So I guess you guys can trump me for this. We'll keep it at 15 for now. We'll move on to, I don't know, I'm just going to bounce around it. I'm going to click. Do
we need to talk about why? Or are we going to talk about the overview at the end?
I think we should probably
mention. Okay, fine.
So we'll just actually, no, if you want to talk about it, go for it.
There'll be discussions where that'll be forced because people will have stuff in different places.
Yes.
But what's I guess putting it off like an S tier player? If it's the most popular deck and we're all accepting that, what's putting you guys off it being S tier? For me, it's too limited in its matchup scope. It's gonna lose to a lot of the fringe stuff, I feel. Definitely Control is one of your worst matchups. I think you're not great into Lugia either.
And agreed. Mostly linear.
One prize, Turtles as well, yeah.
My view is mostly linear. Mostly the fact that I think any of its technology, what people like to say, or innovation is come and gone. It's that boat has sailed. With the
Charm's good.
Charms.
We keep Charm, right?
Yeah. I don't know if you can tweak it anymore to give it the extra percentages that it needs to become S. That's my view.
I think so too.
Yeah, agree. I think it's pretty linear. I also think just from a data perspective, it's had a pretty poor conversion that would lead me to not want to call it an S tier deck. It's had a fine conversion, but it's there's been a couple of weeks where it's been a bit of a joke as to how it's fallen so hard, sometimes even off the graphics. So it's always going to be the most played, but I don't think it quite pushes the S for me.
Thank you. Right, Gardevoir boys, let's go to Gardy. Go on, Jack, you first again.
Okay, I had this in C tier.
C.
I had it at 3%, but I wanted to caveat that obviously in all of the graphics we've seen lately, Gardevoir has consisted of Burnett Gardy and Gardy. So I don't actually know what the split is, but my guess is I think after its success, Burnett Guardi is probably going to maybe move to a higher split of, or Burnett will be a bigger split than just normal Guardies. So I've put it down at 3. Yeah, and then C.
I'll go next before Joe wipes this. I put it in B. Also at 3%. Yep, I also considered the split between Burnett and Guardi, obviously combined. Obviously, we'd be able to compare this against Limitless numbers when we do a review. Maybe we'll get Rab to do the review because that'd be quite funny, and he'll tell us how he always thought Turbo Roaring Moon was going to be A tier or something again.
Oh yeah, right.
But yeah, B tier. I had it pretty high in B tier as well. I don't know if that ever changes anything, but yeah, go on, Joe. Take the floor.
Guardi's the top of my B tier as well.
Yeah,
I have it at 6%. I think it could be a popular stage 2 this weekend. I think Chow Guardi does have a lot of good selling points, to be fair to it. So yeah, I think it could still have a bit of a resurgence in that it is a thinking man's deck. And absolutely bullies Bolt, which is always a good starting checkpoint, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it at the moment, to be honest. I think we saw 3 in top 16 in Gdansk, and I think for good reason. I think it was played a bit more heavily. It probably would still do very well, and there would have been a few more there. I mean, we can talk about Burnett afterwards. Maybe we'll talk about Burnett after this one actually. But Jack, why in C? Or why else in C?
Again, I guess candidly, it's not a deck that I've massively put a lot of time into looking into its results in this meta, because I feel like it's only recently started to see a bit more of an uptick again. So there will be an element of ignorance to my C tier probably, but also like I think there's still a lot to there's still a lot to worry about with. I feel like things like the Duskmar decks, things like the some of the other stage 2s that for me feel more appealing as someone who hasn't really messed too much with Dragapult, Charizard, or Guardi. They feel like they have slightly higher power levels. Guardi can definitely still do some broken stuff. I mean, it was 6 months ago, but we only have to look back at NAIC as to how strong it was, and like the meta isn't that drastically different to what it was then. So yeah, like an element of ignorance, but also an element of with how fast things are now. Like I feel like Guardi's under a little bit more of a time crunch, and in my mind that's why people move more towards Burnett, because the Burnett slowed everything down, which meant you could do some of the cool Guardi things, right? Whereas yeah, but again, I guess being able to play Guardi as a turbo engine is the only way to play it right now, and that's the way you keep up. Is you have to play the candies, and you have to play you can't play all of the cool techs. You have to just get into the game and then try and win it just as quick as some of these like hyper aggro decks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's move on quickly then. We'll go on to Burnett Gardevoir because I think we've obviously started talking about it a little bit. I'll go first. I put it at the bottom of my B tier. Also at 3%, so I just thought in combination when we see it on the graphic in day 1, we're gonna get 6%. Yeah, I don't like its consistency. That's all. That's the only reason why I think it's a little bit lower. If you can guarantee those head flips on Shuppets and enveloping, attack, sure, fine. It might be like mid to upper B tier for me, but having to get into that stage and then also sometimes be a little bit less consistent in drawing the right cards that you need to. We saw Magnus Pedersen really struggle to get that Luminous Energy on that turn, which would have maybe changed the game a little bit or made it a quicker, so he would have a chance in game 3, I suppose. But yeah, that's the only reasons why it draws it back. It loses a bit of consistency. Item lock's cool, but it needs a certain mindset to play the deck. Joe?
I'm bottom of B as well, Alex.
Yeah,
I gave it just 1%, so a total of 7% Guardian is what I'm predicting. I don't think it will be popular. I mean, firstly, it's a more European deck than anything else. And I don't see a compelling reason for people to jump on this deck because you saw some of its frailties on the stream. Like you said, Alex, it's a very freaking slow deck. So anytime one of those dodgier starts is bad, your entire round is in jeopardy because you have to play like an absolute machine to make anything come together. And it has a terrible Lugia, which is just very risky, I think.
Jack?
Yeah, it wasn't quite the very bottom of B, but it was low B for me.
But higher than normal
I
Guardi for you, wasn't it? So
Yeah, it was high, which again I probably put down to ignorance of normal Guardi rather than like backing Bennett, I guess. I think Bennett's relative success in Gdansk might mean more people pick it up, but again, probably respect that they may not want to risk an IC on it.
What was the percentage?
My percentage is 4 because again,
4?
I think it's the 7% Guardi number. So I still think we're going to be seeing 7% Guardi again. Maybe an element of ignorance in terms of what the actual split was for some of the earlier tournaments as well. But I do wonder whether some people may decide to, like, just after the couple of finishes it had in Gdansk, may decide to move more towards it. But yeah, I'm still, like, despite where I put it, I'm also not a massive fan of the deck. It seems super frail, and again, in a format like you say, Joe, where you have to win 2 games, you really do need to play quick if you've lost a quick game, and you can't do that if you're just picking, or you typically can't do that to a level of success if you're just picking up the deck. So yeah, feels like definitely a risky deck, but I could see people, the other thing about it is people like item lock, so it always has that draw of people that like item lock, so yeah, I think it's, but low B for me for sure.
All right, well, by the way, I'm just kind of averaging our percentages roughly, so I'm giving it 3% on our current consolidated one. We'll tweak it to either fit the just under 100% or whatever we want to give it towards the end afterwards. We had enough discussion around that earlier. Let's go Miraidon. We won't touch on every sort of A and S and B decks, maybe.
He's assuming.
I've actually put it in C at 2%. I really struggle to justify many racing 2-price decks over Raging Bolt right now. So that's where, in terms of whether I would play the deck. So that's why it's pretty low. And similarly, I don't think there's masses and masses of people playing it, but I think it's probably the most played non-Raging Bolt 2-price deck. So that's why I've put it at 2 rather than 1 or 0. But I think a lot of the Miraidon players are Raging Bolt players that are just playing the better racing deck right now. I don't think it's terrible if people are expecting like a higher Guardi meta and stuff like that. But again, maybe the way I've done my meta means that it doesn't look as good, which is why it's as low as it is for me.
This is great having you on, because at the moment me and Joe are fairly like in sync, and Jack's just throwing wild takes. No, I'm joking, not wild, but
that's what I'm here for. But yeah, low C for me.
Low C.
But if the meta is, I guess, slightly different, it does get a lot better. Things like hammer stuff obviously are pretty powerful in their own right.
Joe B.
D tier for me, 1%.
D.
Yeah, I think there's no compelling reason to play this deck apart from maybe you troll Lugia and you're pretty good into Drago, but I think you have just as many bad matchups, right? I think you're really bad into Turtle now they play Booth. I think Zard's horrific, Bolt's horrific. I think there's I would rather play some other great decks like Gouging Fire by a long way.
We'll touch on that afterwards for sure. So I had it low C as well. Also, I just thought because it's a deck that's been around for long enough that people will keep playing it and maybe just keep going on with it. They may target, quote unquote, what many people think are going to be 2 of the top decks, which is Drago and Lugia. And if you get swinging early against Drago, you can just wipe the floor of them. Lugia, you kind of troll them like you just said, Joe.
It did top 8 in Buenos Aires as well.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a few things there going for it. I had it at 3, I think I said I had it 3%. We'll average it at 2 since Joe's slightly below. How high on that D tier was it? Out of interest.
It was high D tier. It was second top of D tier.
Second top, but that means
you can put it low. I'm happy with it being low C.
Right, we'll stick it in C for now. Let's go up towards the top then. Terracross Dustmore. Joe, I know you love this deck. Where we go?
I have this as an S tier deck.
Okay, go on.
And I think it's at 9%.
You think 9% of all LAIC Master Division players will play this deck?
Yeah, correct. Just in case anyone was confused what these percentages mean.
Yeah, you know, I'm
Thank
just
you,
trying to
Alex.
clarify for the viewers.
Thank you for outlining as to
They might
what
not be
I'm trying to
watching the
say.
video. They might be
Good
just
point.
listening to us, you know. So every
Good
now and
point.
then I'll chuck it in.
At
Jack,
the
go on.
LAIC 2024-5 season, I believe it will get 9% in the Masters division.
Thank you, Joe. Jack Gold.
I've got 8%. I've gone A. I think it is the highest power level deck in format. I think it is the best deck in format. I think it's probably the most skill expressive deck in format, which is what I think drags it down the tiers, because I think it. I guess I'm not looking at it objectively from a deck point of view. I'm also looking at it from a difficulty to play point of view, which is what drags it down for me a little bit. It's the same reason why when we get to controls, I've valued them slightly differently, because I think one is easier to play than the other, but one is more like the other is more powerful. I think people should play. I think more people should be playing this deck. I think this deck is insanely high power level, and I think if you put the time into it, you can do some incredible things with it. I just don't think it will ever, like for me, it will never go, or right now it won't go above tier, because there's only I feel like a really select handful of players that are doing really well with it, which are the really dedicated pilots. But that's what almost stops me from being able to almost justify with stats that it's an S tier deck, if that makes sense.
Well,
I think the biggest selling point though is just the conversion rate, right? The conversion rate is incredible, and that's probably the thing that advocates for it to be actually an S tier deck, is that its conversion every tournament is just insane.
yeah, fair. I mean, it's decent points. I mean, one of the things that we have to take into account for this tier list is, I guess, what we think of the actual deck itself. Whether you think it converts or not is kind of irrelevant, right? It's based on the actual. Well,
true.
It'd be a different tier list altogether. We said conversion.
That's true. Yeah.
And I guess that's why we put a percentage and we start thinking about it that way.
Maybe it should be higher for me, but the percentage is probably what is the indicator of that. So yeah, it probably should be a little bit. Maybe. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I still don't know that I put it in S. But
there's so many factors, right?
Because
you're talking about the pilots of the deck as well, and at that point, if you just go on raw deck, I mean, it could
buffs
be
or no buffs.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Is towards this correct? Maybe not. It has probably too many switch outs. But I'm at the top of my A list as well. Also 8%. I don't think it goes just into the S tier, simply because I think it's not necessarily like super complicated, but there are just many lines that you have to take at times, which can feel very odd. And this is despite me already saying that I've not touched the deck at all to Joe not too long ago. So, but it's my understanding of the game, right? This is how I've got to take it into account. But 8% top of A, I don't think that's going to be too far from Joe. Unless you put it right at your top of your S, which is thing.
It's not my top. No.
Okay. The other thing is, I don't know how you guys done it, but my distribution from S to D is pretty like bell curvy as well. I don't know how it feels for you guys. So, but yeah, we can talk about that afterwards. Let's move on. Any decks want to call out? Let's deck close to our hearts, Joe. Palkia Noctowl.
I have this as 1% play rate. I don't think there's going to be a lot of people going for the deck. But I do have it as an A tier choice. I do like the Jet Energy. I think it unlocks a lot of the matchups that were dodgy. So yeah, I actually think it's pretty strong for this weekend, and I think it's easier to play than Terrapagos Dusknoir as well.
Yeah, I think so. Again, I guess I'll go into it. It's in my B tier, second behind Guardy. I had it at 2%, just because I mean naturally we're going to see some weird numbers around it anyway, because it pops up as Terrapagos Noctowl on the graphics. Inherently powerful. You know how much me and Joe have spoken about it. Maybe if you caught the streams as well. The Jet Energy is a really cool inclusion, because then you just clean into things like those stall decks like Snorlax, for example, as well, which is kind of cute. I don't really know much if there's much more I can say about it. I think it's less complicated than the versions that I've played. But again, Fan Rotom and Noctowl just opens up so many doors and avenues that it makes it such a good deck. But I don't think it could stretch into A from my perspective. But Jack, you may back your boy Joe on this point. I'm not too sure.
I've done the opposite. I've got it at 1% as well. I've got it in C tier. Again, this is probably ignorance in that I haven't really played the Jet Energy version, so I haven't really seen what else it can do. But the compelling thing is it does have a good Terrapagos matchup, which is really good. And yeah, if it's an easier play than Terrapagos, it makes a lot of sense. The biggest thing for me is obviously it feels like it's taken a while for it to take off. And I don't even know that I would describe it is taking off yet. So I think it's another of those decks where I feel like I don't know whether people will put all of their chips on it for an internet's like
Sure.
if they like I think you guys would, but that's because you were championing it way earlier than people actually were, right? I do still I think the deck is a lot of fun though. But yeah, I think it's going to have a pretty low play rate, and I was probably basing my data a little bit more off of pre Jet Energy stuff. So yeah, it might have it. That may solve some of the
You're
issues.
insulting mine and Joe's deck, Jack. That's outrageous.
I would have played it with you. I really would have played it with you. It was the first deck I built in Stellar Crown, to be honest. Yeah, I think it's a really cool deck. But yeah, I can't see. Also, again, we'll probably touch on Palkia Desmoir, but also I feel like that has enveloped so much of the Palkia space that I feel like it's going to be quite hard converting any of that. Yeah, I feel like it's going to be quite hard converting a lot of those players as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had so much fun playing the deck, and I probably will continue playing it for a little bit longer anyway. It's gone into our B, and we'll average it out at 1% for now as well. Palkia Dustmar, since Jack quickly opened on it. Jack, you want to go first?
I think this deck is really bad, personally. I think it's a much worse version of Terrapagos Dustmar. It's Terrapagos Dustmar with more steps. I've got it at a really high play rate, though. I've got it at 5% because it does typically have a lot of champions, and obviously did win this past weekend as well. So I think there could be a lot of people that maybe had been drawn off of it that may end up going back to it for this weekend, like believing in the results. And admittedly, Jeremy, who won with it, has been playing it for a few months now. Like, he's been winning cups and stuff with it. So it's definitely a deck that is a skill expressive deck. But I really haven't. I've never been. The only time I was like kind of impressed by it was the first time we saw it on American streams. And even then, like by game 2, it was already like tripping over itself sometimes. So I was like, oh, okay, this concept's cool. So I'm really surprised that it like has so much momentum behind it, if that makes sense. Because I think it's just the worst version of Terrapagos Dustmar. Right. So it's more steps.
What tier did you put it in?
I put it in C as well. I put it in C as well. And I think it's going to have a much higher play rate than Palkia Noctowl. But yeah, I think it's a considerably worse deck than probably both of those decks for different reasons.
All right, Joe, very quickly.
Similar, I think it's the gacha version of Terrapagos, so I also put this in C tier. I only think a 2% play rate. I don't think I already think it's peaked in its popularity. Mm-hmm. I think the only compelling selling point is that it is really good into Terrapagos. But one of its other selling points was that it was busted into the Sage 2s, and I don't think those are going to be in the top 3 of our most played decks, maybe even not our top 4, at least from my projection. And that was like the key selling point of this deck, is that it absolutely dunks on the evolutions, and I don't think that's as important anymore. So I think it was a well-timed deck for a couple of weeks back, and now it's probably just like shifted poorly. So I've got it in C currently, but I mean, yeah, Terrapagos is just more balanced.
Yeah, I mean, I've got it at top of my C tier as well, 4%. So I think the average is about 3%. Yeah, similar. I mean, we saw its terrible performance technically at Gdansk, where we didn't even see it on the day 2 graphics at all. I think there was maybe like 2 or 3 that sort of snuck in. I don't think they pulled up any trees either in day 2 performances, if I can remember correctly. Yeah. But yeah, if you get going, the deck's pretty good, right? Palkia's a great attacker, Greninja's a nice attacker. You weave in those Dustmars as well. Yeah, you're cherry picking pieces, which is kind of cute.
It's a strong deck. I just think it's the wrong meta for it. I think we've moved on. There was definitely a point in the meta where this could be like the meta breaker. And some players did cash in, but I think like we're beyond that point.
All right, let's touch on Ancient Box. Let's try and fill out our graphic a little bit. I've put it in D, and it is after your few conversations with yourself. You've convinced me. Is that 0%? We say 0. It's closer to 0 rather than 1.
To 1.
So we refrain from using decimal places here. So I put it at 0%. But there might be 1 or 2 people who pick it up and play it, and they'd have to hit insane run of decks that would need to be facing, I think, to really get anywhere. But I've seen crazier things. Right, it has no draw engine. I think you guys had a conversation with TSS on this, and it was just like Zach going, it just can't draw cards, and there's better decks you can play that does the same thing.
Yeah, I put D to 0 as well.
Yeah, same for me.
I reckon Jack had it at 1% before we told him it was 0. Before you told him it was 0. Quick, change it.
I've moved it down from B tier.
We're in that format again, are we? Right. Let's talk about Reggie Drago. Most recently won our Gdansk regionals, won Lille regionals, just done super well. Just generally, I have it as one of my S tier decks. It's 11%. I've put it at. So I don't know if that's high. I think it goes up in comparison to what we saw in Gdansk, where it actually went down despite winning Lille, which is for me crazy. Great deck into just loads of matchups. It's very opportunity for players to be able to express their skill, like we kind of mentioned with Terapagos. And I think top players will gravitate to it. So you combine top players with a very good deck, you'll get good numbers, you'll get good conversion. That's why I think it's an S tier deck. That's it. Yeah, Jack, go. If you have any, you don't have to add too much if you don't want to.
Yeah. I agree with almost. Well, I agree with all of that, but I still only have it as an A tier deck. I still don't think it. Like, I personally don't think we have an S tier deck right now. I think the top
even
four
if we zoomed in and we
close.
said stretch this bell curve of a
I'd still think Drago and Terapagos is pretty tying. I also had it at 10%. Again,
10.
For some reason this deck never seems to break like 10%, but yeah, I don't know. So yeah, I've got it at 10%, but it is my highest tier deck in A.
Right, Joe?
Okay, it is your highest tier deck. Okay. So I also only have it in A tier, even though I think it's the most powerful deck in the game. I think for this tournament, I am expecting Bolt and Lugia to be the most popular decks, which makes it a hard room for Drago. I also think it's going to be 12% in play. Like, I fully think this is the best deck in the game, but I'm thinking for a play for this weekend, it's tough. I also think there'll be like an elevated amount of mirror match, which is really grief. So yeah, 12%, but not the easiest play for this weekend. But play it if you're good at it.
So that puts it on average top of A and at 11% here. So
we're gonna get ragged. I thought I was the only one being spicy. Jack's done it as well.
I was trying. I was the differential there. Anyway, Snorlax Stool. Everyone loves a bit of old Snorlax. Go on, Jack. You first. Give us the spiel.
B tier, middle of B tier. I've got it at 5%. Think it will be more popular than the other control variants. Think similarly to what I said earlier on, the other control variants are probably higher power level, but also much higher skill level. So I think we typically see Snorlax be a bit more popular. But I think it's had, it's doing well enough. I think it's only super scared of a couple of things right now. I think it is a little bit scared of, obviously, towards changes to Terapagos that maybe makes it a worse play. But I think there's also a lot of debate about whether, one, you want to have that mentality of trying to beat everything and therefore adjusting some cards to do that. But also, two, whether it's worth doing that in terms of, like, are we going to see that, or do we just play the original list that Tord kind of presented to us? And also, it's Snorlax. People, like, there will be dedicated players to it. I always feel like it hits around those, or the control decks hit around that 4-5%. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Sure. I was also I was going to say it'd probably be quite similar. Middle would be 4%.
Same for me.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll
and just like Jack, I would have had it higher if it weren't for the recent changes in Terapagos. If people just take Tord's list, that's a really bad matchup. And I was expecting some Guardi as well, which is also pretty tough for it.
All right. Okay. Let's move on to Iron Fawns, I guess, since we'll talk about the stool kind of control archetypes together. Joe, I know you shat on it the other day.
Yeah, I'll keep doing that. I'll put it in middle of C, I think, as a play. I think it's just so much harder with Bolts being a much more difficult matchup. Now they have time with Charms and they have Slitherwing that can randomly bung you. And Terapagos got a lot harder as well. So it's tough out there. And also Guardi, potentially being in the mix is a worry for it. So it's a really narrow vision deck, I think.
Percentage?
4.
4%. Still,
I think it will see play.
Still,
It got some top cuts, right? It has top cut a few tournaments, so I still think there'll be a contingent piloting it, because it's still like fundamentally okay. It's solid into Drago unless there's new attacking techs, and then it's very good into Lugia. So you do take free wins, but I think it's quite a narrow visioned deck.
Jack, very quickly, any changes to that?
Yeah, echo that almost entirely. It is higher up C tier for me, but that's just because, I don't think it's as good as A and B, and C tier, I guess it gets a little bit blurry. Had it at 5%, still think it's going to have representation. It did well enough in Gdansk that I think people will still like commit to it, not necessarily analyzing whether it's a good play or not, or whether it's the right play or not. I think it did well enough that people will be like, okay, it won Worlds, it's got 2 more top 8s, so I'm just going to stick with it.
Fair. I mean, I had it at my bottom of my C tier. I actually I came close to putting it in D, just because I think it's an awful play for this tournament. But 3%, so we'll average it about 4. It moves it into sort of that middle to lower C tier, but we'll get to that when we fill out the other decks. So let's move on quickly. Lost Zone box. Jack.
Quite low C tier, got it at 2%. Again, feel like it's just going to be those dedicated players that have been playing it for a while, had a couple of decent results, but I really struggle to justify playing it over some of the other decks. I think it's only going to be the people that have really put hours into it that I think will do well with it. So yeah, I don't think there's going to be a huge. Typically sees a decent conversion because there's not many people playing it in day one. So yeah, I've got it at 2.
Joe?
I've got it at 2% as well. I have it slightly higher in C tier just because of its power level, but the Regidragos will stop you making top cut for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I was mid C. I had it at 4% because I think people were just like, again, it's one of those decks where outside of Drago, I feel like it's got a pretty nice spread, and does okay into most other matchups. So obviously Drago's, and I don't think Drago's ever in people's minds will never be like the 14 or 15% of Raging Bolt. So like you're only then bobbing and weaving maybe 10% of the field, maybe a little bit.
The problem
more,
is the percentage of Drago goes up as you get better records.
That is very true. But
that's the problem.
There's some people.
It becomes 30% towards the back end of the day. That's the problem.
Yeah, true. Okay, fine. But yeah, that was where it was. It wasn't a big change, so it's still towards the bottom of C anyway. You guys said 2%, right? So it averages at 2 a bit more. Let's go to Golden Go. Joe?
I put it as a 1% deck in D tier. Again, I don't see many compelling reasons to play this deck. I mean, what's the reason to play this deck? Is there one? I don't really know. Like, you can rag on Raging Bolt, but there's so many better decks that can do that. It's fun. You have so much fun with Goldengo, but
Okay. If you wait until you get Energy Surge.
I don't think it's great.
I've got 1% D tier as well. 1% D tier as well.
I had it low C, but I had it at 2%. I mean, I kind of echo that. A lot of the thoughts are behind it, but I just think that there's
it's just so fun.
You'll catch some people off at some point. You'll have a big attacker. It's fun. Like you played it at a cup, didn't you, Joe?
Listen, I like the deck. I just don't think it's good.
Right. Okay.
I can detach my personal bias to this tier list.
We'll move on from that then. So let's go into. I think we have one of the dust. Do we have both Dusknoirs or one Dusknoir? In these.
We've done Terrapagos, right?
Oh, sorry. I meant to say Dragapult.
I think the screenshot I sent was just one Dragapult.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've only done one Dragapult.
Dragapult Dusknoir, was it? Or was it just Dust?
Well, I just used Dragapult.
Just in normal Dragapult, yeah.
Fine. So where we put
combining the two.
I actually had both of them, which is probably why I had 21, which is what confused me in the first place. But they're in the exact same position for me.
Fine. That's perfect. That's perfect.
So I had it in, basically middle C tier. And since they took each other's percentages, I had it at 5%.
Okay.
In total. Good deck, won tournaments, plays well, has probably one of the best attackers in the game. Hence why we see it do so well in Regidrago. If you can get there, fantastic. But it has limitations, right? It has to rely on crystals, rely on Crispin, rely on energy, rely on random stuff. Sorry, so if you are watching this video, Dragapult Dust Noir is just kind of encapsulating all Dragapults, I guess. So yeah, that's me at 5% at the moment.
I'm at 6%. I have it in upper B though. I think its solid finishes speak for themselves in the power level of the archetype. I do think like the Bolt is a huge hurdle for you for just how many there are in the field that stops me putting it higher tier. But its power level is absolutely bonkers, and I think you can do like I think this does a better job than Guardian in like shutting off engines from opponents and throwing hand disruption at them at the same time, and that is just a crucial selling point in the game right now.
Fine. Jack, keep us honest.
I have it at the top of B tier at 6%.
Top B, okay.
I think there's definitely decks above it that it's scared of. I think there's not many decks below it that it's scared of. I think it can crush a lot of like. Obviously, ignoring the best decks is scary, but if you want to roll those dice, I feel like it crushes a lot of these other decks. It's, turn 2 Phantom Dive is insanely powerful, right? So, yeah, I'm glad you didn't split them up for all of us, because I have no idea what I would actually put that split at, though. I think,
turn 2. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know which way around I could have done it. Okay, so that means it's stuck into the upper mid of our B tier at the moment. At 6% because of both of you two. But yeah, let's move on. Let's do Lugia, since we need to chuck our feathered friend into the mix. Jack, just kick us off.
Still got it at A tier. I've got it at 10%. I think it's going to be joint with Regidrago as the second most popular deck. I don't quite know which one's going to be which, but I think they will be the top 3 decks. Those two and Raging Bolt. I've got it at the bottom of A, but again, I feel like the bottom, like Raging Bolt and Lugia, I guess, kind of can interchange. I feel like they're both relatively linear. I still hate Lugia. I would never play it personally, but it's just not. I don't have the temperament for playing Lugia. Really respect anyone that does, and it obviously has really good finishes. So respect it as a deck. Could never actually pick it up and play it, but think people will, and think it will be joint with Regidrago as the second most popular deck at 10%.
So I'll quickly go before Joe throws more spanners in the works. I have it as the second best deck in my list in the S tier. So it's on that cusp for me just because of its inherent power. I think you have a linear first couple of turns, and then you're kind of linear because of maybe the bullseye. Maybe it's just linear. But because of the range of attackers that it has and the way you can maybe change the way it's built in terms of the attackers, in terms of Chinchinos or using Iron Hands or the Wellspring Ogerpon, it gives it a bit more unpredictability, and I think that's enough for me to say that it's a deck you have to seriously consider, not necessarily going to a tournament to play, but going into a tournament knowing you're going to face and actually have to beat. And unless you're playing Iron Thorns or Miraidon, even if you have a game plan against it, Lugia can still do Lugia things and beat you, and that's why I think it pushes it into S tier for me. But of course, on that cusp. I have it at 11%, which was the same as I had Regidrago, I think, or maybe it was around the same. But yeah, so that pushes it up from bottom of A little bit more towards the top. But Joe, keep us honest, your turn.
This is my highest tier deck. I have this at the top of my S tier. And I also think 15% of players going to the Latin American International Championships will be gambling it all on Catrick Aromas and Mesagozas. I wouldn't play the deck myself, but I absolutely respect it. It's a very high tier threat. And I think it's so hard to justify the Thorns and the Miraidons right now that it will be low enough percent that the Boogeyman matchups won't hit the majority of Lugia players. Some will get taken down, but you just have to be the chosen one on the day. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if it just dominated the higher tables. It had a very bizarre Gdansk, but it was also a very bizarre day 2 in Gdansk for some reason, and just enough Lugias did hit the odd Thorns that made it. And push them down a bit, but I would definitely expect this deck to top cut, and yeah, I think it's.
So I
think it's a.
You only had Lugia in S tier, right? That means.
I have Lugia and Terapagos in my S tier.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Terapagos, yeah.
But yeah, what was I going to say? I also think, like you said, Alex, you actually do, other than turn 1 and 2, you do have more agency in the game than Bolt, which I think will appeal a number of players. As to why I'm also putting it at 15% play rate.
Okay, interesting. So I've put that out as our consolidated only S tier deck, just because Jack's the one who drags it down, but not far enough, I suppose. 13% is what we've collectively put it down as. We'll power through these last 5, I guess. Let's Gouging Fire. I have it in the middle of B. Here he is. The salute to Luke Kirkham, I think. Middle of B, 2%. It'll be picked up on. People won't be able to, as Luke says, play it correctly. But people will still do well with it because it still has that. It still has a bit of unpredictability. Although we've seen it on stream a number of times, we haven't really seen it on stream do well, which is a weird thing to say. Despite,
Luke's keeping it under wraps perfectly by bricking every game.
Honestly, which is a crazy thing to kind of see, despite it having come like the top 16 and the multiple and top 32 in Gdansk. But yeah, I think it's a deck to be scared of. I don't know. It's a deck to be scared of, but if you know its tricks, and more often than not, you kind of can find a way around it. But it still asks you so many questions in terms of the deck itself, right? I don't know. You guys might have a different view, so open up the floor. Jack, go on. Crush poor Luke Kirkham's soul right now. I dare you.
No. So I have it at 1% play rate. I think it's I don't think I would have said 1% a couple of weeks ago, but it started to gain enough traction and have a couple more players pick it up other than Luke that now I think it might even get to that 1% play rate. Have it like high up C. It's not top of C, but it's high up C. Again, probably an element of injustice to the deck in terms of I haven't played it. I've only played against it. I haven't played with it. But I think the results are there, and I think it only needs, like, for me, if it does really well this weekend, again, like a few into day 2, maybe even breaking into top 16s, top 8s, I could see it at least moving up to B for me. I'm almost waiting for it to make a top 8 to be able to then say, yeah, I think this is a B tier archetype.
All right, Joe.
Guess that makes me the believer then. I've put it at the bottom of my A tier as a deck. I think it is the clunkier bolt, but beats fringe stuff simply by being able to play 4 Jet Energy, I think is how that comes about.
Oh yeah, you have said you liked 4 Jet Energy in decks in general.
I freaking love it right now. I think it's insane. Even if it only takes out... It collaterals like 8% of the format, but I think that's a really good 8% because that can squeeze you into that day 2. And also, like, control decks do float towards the top in most like day 1 situations as well. I'm actually a believer in the Gouging Fire. As much as I troll Luke for it, I think he's got the right combination of attackers in the deck to accommodate for the format. You naturally get around Legacy with Monkey Dory, which is hilarious as well. So I think you have game plans into pretty much everything but Charizard. You get your pants pulled down by Zard, but who cares about that?
I mean, he beat one
that's fine.
In Gdansk, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but that was... that was just Pokemon happening. That wasn't deck A versus deck B. That was the Pokemon element of the game.
That was the variance coming into play. So what was your percentage again? Sorry,
I give it 3%. I think I've gone mental on that one. But it was just picked up enough with enough non-Luke Kirkham pilots in day 2 of Gdansk that I thought other people would actually be like, I guess it's not just this one bloke, which made me think it would actually see an even bigger uptick.
And he's been on pods. He has
been on podcasts, which does matter. He was quite understated about the deck, though. He didn't say it was amazing at any point, I don't think.
Enough. No leaks.
Okay, so you've mentioned Charizard, Pidgeot. So by the way, that went into towards the upper of B, I guess collectively at 2%. Charizard, Pidgeot. Since you mentioned it, Joe, kick us off with that one.
I hate it. I've got it low B. Yeah, I think this is an incredibly overplayed deck. And I still think it will be overplayed. I've put it at 6%. This is so watered down, hogwash, hope I set up 2 or 3. I think this is less consistent than like Lugia and all these other decks. I think it's actually so troll, this deck in this format. I
feel like your sentiment to the deck is it's so much worse than all the others that are below it. That we put it in C and D.
This is because it's unrightfully getting so much play. Yeah, right. It's just that like you're having to play 3 stage 2s just to have some sort of game plan, and even then you sack like 6 matchups by just hoping. Yeah, this deck is just like everything Terrapagos is doing, but a third of the time.
Okay. Jack, any more on that? You're going to put it in A, aren't you? Come on, please.
No, but I've got it high. I've got it like high B. I've got it at 7% as well. I think it will be played. I agree that I think it is overplayed. I think it's had a couple of good results, but I don't think it's really blown me away in terms of results. I still think Dragapult is better, but it seems to always just be pipped at or most of the time be pipped at the post in terms of play rate by Charizard. But yeah, so I think it'll be high. Well, I put it in high B at 7%, but I agree with Joe that I think it probably actually only deserves 2 or 3%, and it might even be closer to a C tier deck than an A tier deck as to where I've put it.
See, so all right, so I've put it in mid B at 7%. So I think that there's a few more people that will play it than both of you. I think both said 6 or 7. We're roughly about the same. But I didn't have the negative outlook you both have on it. I thought it was middle of B simply because it can play, in comparison to Dragapult, it can play the better A specs and just generally do better because of things like that. So whether it's Hero's Cape or whether it's Unfair Stamp, or rather than playing Crystal or whatever Dragapults had to play like Near Upper once upon a time, that's why I've put it higher than Dragapult. But yeah, I still think it's a good deck, but only because it's got tricks and tools like Unfair Stamp that can bring itself back into the game and give you that one turn, which allows you to then just kind of power your way to victory. But yeah, it's a deck. I think
I'm being brutal on it. Obviously, it's got a high power level, but I just hate the direction the decks had to take to try and survive in this world. It's having to play a freaking 3-1-2 of its main attacker, and
but it's always had to do
that's
weird,
just okay.
It's always had to do weird things like that, though, right?
Yeah, but in the past you did it so that you could play like enough switch outs to beat control or like this, that, and the other. Now you're still scooping those matchups, which is just so tragic.
Yeah, you're scooping even harder now, right?
It's weird because you don't even want to see most of the top other decks. Like you're batting to Drago, you're like mid into Terapagos. The only matchup you actually want to hit is Bolt, right?
And then with Charms, it's probably not always the easiest as well. So you have to be playing things like
I think you always take on Bolt. Yeah, I think you always take on Bolt anyway.
Really?
You've got double counter catcher, right? You just go take that one instead.
That's true.
And like, sure, you have Briar, but like most of the time, I'm seeing people squeeze wins by having a Pidgeotless board and just having Thornton Candy Pidge in hand. It's like, grow up. Can't believe it.
I hope everyone who's playing Charizard at LAIC just hears Joe in the background going, grow up.
It's mostly out of the frustration. Whenever me and Jack are doing new format, the last 2 times we've done tabletop gameplay of Charizard, I've absolutely hated my time playing Zard. And I look at the hands and I'm like, how is this the combination of cards that have found their way into my hand? Like every single freaking time I play that deck, it's insane.
Right. Okay. It's enough Zard. It's in middle of B, 6%. Let's move on to Benjamin Rabiotti's favorite deck, Turbo Roaring Moon. A deck he's always foreseen as the great hope, shining light of the Pokemon trading card game. I have this in D because as much as an instant KO is great, it's bad because it reduces your health to a silly, stupid amount. Also at 0%. So alongside the other ancient box deck, this ancient deck is shouldn't be going anywhere. Jack?
Yeah, I have got it in D tier at 0%, primarily because I can't. I'm doing that so he can tell me I'm wrong when it wins next week and that it was his sleeper pick. So I'm doing this for him.
Oh yeah.
I actually have it at top of my C tier. Can't believe
top
it.
Of C.
Grab in disguise.
That is the top of my C tier.
Rab's
We've always loved it here on the channel. I have it at 1% as well. I'm a believer. I'm a believer. I mean, it top forward in this format, didn't it? Or was Baltimore before?
Baltimore
might have been just before.
Yeah, definitely.
Before. All right, fine. So it's had a top 16 placement, a couple of top 32s in there. Love to see it. I mean, this deck is an aggressive archetype, so I'm never going to give it like that low of a floor, I suppose.
Yeah, fine.
And it is very consistent at what it's trying to do. It's just what it's trying to do isn't amazing. I do think jelly is really important for the deck, though. So if you play some jellies, I think that makes gouging way less horrific. Exactly. That's what I'm saying, bro.
Fine.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
In the middle of C tier because it needs jellies, but lower if it didn't have jellies. All right, we hear you, Joe.
I'm saying there's a chance. Listen, you can play judge and scam quite a few decks, and I do think that E-Hammer is actually pretty cool.
Fine. We'll allow it. Middle of C tier, 1%. We'll give that to you. Last two decks, Cloth. I had it at the top of my D tier, just because it's Cloth.
Top of D for me as well, 0%.
I had it at 1.
Top of.
Go on, say it, Jack. Say it.
I've got it top of D tier. I've got it at 2.
Oh, we go. Average of 1%. See, how many LAIC players are there going to be? Was it like 1,500 or 1,800?
I have no idea, actually.
I didn't see who.
Either. I'm sure I could check in a Discord or something.
So
Cloth's such a Cloth's such another of those decks, though, right? Where people just flock to it, love it.
The funny thing is, everyone like pretends it's got a good Terrapagos. It's actually got a really bad Terrapagos from my experience.
Because it hits weakness, Joe.
They see the symbol and they're like, "Yo, I can smash that up."
All right, last deck. We'll ignore Cloth. I mean, that is Cloth. Pidgeot Control is our last deck. Obviously has a few stalwarts that play it. Joe, you first, because I'm sure you've got plenty to say about this if you need to.
I don't have a huge amount to say. I've got it bottom of C at 1%. I think it's just hard to try and brute force out Pidgey in this format and Pidgeot in this format. There's so many ways that players can just take those boys out and keep them out, and then your amazing toolbox of every answer under the sun actually just doesn't come together quickly enough, and you've fed too many prizes. Like, Snorlax doesn't feed as many prizes as Pidgeot just kind of has to try and do what it wants to do.
All right, okay. So I have it at bottom of C as well, at 2%. So a little bit higher in play, because I think there'll just be some diehard players who would want to play that deck. Jack?
I've got it 2% as well at bottom of B, just because, again, I feel like the good and dedicated players will play it and find ways around. But yes, I agree with Joe that it is an uphill battle in the first couple of turns to even get into the game. But I do think these kinds of control decks do have such a good tool set in them that if they can get into the game, they usually then don't take too long before they've locked you out of the game. So yeah, bottom of B, 2%.
We just haven't seen too much of it recently, right? It feels like, but yeah, right. I'll quickly run through so that you guys, because I don't know if obviously you guys can't see the screen that I'm recording, but so we currently have top of the only deck in S tier, Lugia Archeops at 13%.
Okay.
Regidrago and the top of A at 11. Terrapagos Dustoir at 8. Raging Bolt Ogerpon at 15%, so that rounds up our sort of S and A tier decks. B, and this is where we might need to do a quick bit of tinkering. Probably don't need to be honest. Gardevoir's top of B at 4%. Gouging Fire at 2%. Burnett Guardi at 3%. Charizard Pidgeot at 6%. Dragapult at 6%. Palkia Noctowl at 1%. Snorlax Stall bottom of B at 4%.
I think, do we all like Dragapult more than Zard? I know at least me and Jack do.
I don't, but we can flip it around it. We'll flop that around. They're equal in power equal in ability in my opinion.
That's way wrong, kiddo.
Sure, why not? Watch. I don't even want to talk about it.
Don't even say it.
Yeah, it's fine. Nothing else, right? We're happy with that. Palkia Noctowl and Snorlax after that. Right, C tier, Palkia Dustoir 3%, Lost Zone Box 2%, Joe's Turbo Roaring Moon at 1%, Pidgeot Control at 2%, Iron Thorns at 4%, and Miraidon bottom of C at 2%. Does that sound awful?
Genius.
Fine.
Absolutely genius.
And then D tier has the
How did Roaring Moon get that high? I swear I put it the highest.
Wait, what?
Oh, it's because I put it at the top. How did Roaring Moon get that high?
You put it as top of C.
You guys trashed it, right?
I put it in D, and then Jack put it in C, right?
I put it. I put it at bottom of D.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, bottom of C then.
Put him lower down. Put him middle of the pack. Put him behind Thorns or something.
Joe's panicking now. Joe's panicking. He's like, wait.
I've overcommitted.
Moon's at the bottom of C. We'll leave him there. And then D tier.
He's gone to the bottom. Oh.
Yeah, but D tier, Cloth top of D, Golden Go middle, and then Ancient Box right at the bottom at 0%. How's that?
Terrible.
Terrible.
I mean the decks, not the tier list.
In total, we've predicted 89%. So there's another 11% we've associated to the others. So that includes things like, I don't know, Cornerstone, Mimikyu, crap, and I don't know what other nonsense that we haven't seen or we haven't factored in here.
Dragathorns, all the other
in-betweens. Trash. But I think that's not a bad list. What we'll do, as I kind of, well, I didn't really mention it at the start, we'll actually share our consolidated list and each of our individual tiers as well, because I think that'd be quite funny to actually see how we actually do in comparison.
Really funny that.
Really funny.
I tell you what, I'm either going to drown or fly with my tier list compared to the consolidated one.
And we'll get some scores by Rabbi to tell us how well we done.
Oh yeah, goodness.
Get him involved. Away from the hospital, away from the.
He can adjudicate all this. Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. We'll get this all shared. I'll get this all shared tonight ahead of LAIC, of course, and then see how it pops off. We'll end it here because it's long enough. An hour and 20 minutes or so.
I've had it.
I'm bored of you guys. Any final words, my Omni and the Poke?
Can we comments down below of who's Omni and who's the Poke? We're still trying to figure it out. But yeah, good luck in LAIC. Be safe out there, traveling groups, but have a fun time as well.
All right, Jack, sign us off.
Yeah, echo that. Have fun. Good luck. And I was going to say, if you've left it this late to find out a tier list, then really good luck, because I don't know.
Some people just want justification, Jack, of their deck choice.
Yeah.
Or they want the fire lit under them because you put theirs in D and they're going to show you.
Oh god.
Where was it? It was one of the last tournaments I went to. I sat next to someone and they had a go at me for placing the deck they were playing in D, and I was like, okay. It's not a personal
Wait. What tournament was that? Where were you? What table were you at that point? And was it justified?
No, it was on my flight.
Oh, flight. I thought you said on the table. My bad. Okay.
Sorry, on my flight. Yeah.
I thought you said I thought it would be quite amusing that you were at table 800 and something. They're like, why did you put this in D?
But I get getting people come up to me being like, yeah, he's winning, he's doing well with it. I'm like, okay, cool.
Right. Okay, that's enough from us at SpilltheTeaCG podcast. Like Joe said, comment, subscribe, do whatever you don't want anymore. I can't be asked to do a call to the arms. But yeah, thank you very much for listening in. And yeah, we'll catch you hopefully in the next episode. Cheers.
Bye.